Chapter 12, page 221. Arrivé in Dader c'est pour Paris, the conductor announced, passing down the aisle. Paris, Paris. We be arriving shortly, Dell said, as she turned to meet her lips to mine, silencing any more words in that touching touch of itself indivisible love. It's called the Latin Quarter, Latin Quartier, because for nearly 18 centuries Latin was the mother tongue here until Napoleon put a stop to it after the Revolution. Delilah offers as she spoons sugar into her coffee. We're sitting in a sidewalk cafe, Le Dormagal, in Boulevard Saint-Germain. A road crew is paving asphalt over old cobblestones. I would have thought they would want to preserve the old flavor of cobblestone, I wondered out loud. As a student here in '68, when riots broke out over conditions within the faculty, I watched fellow students tear up the cobblestones to hurl at the riot police. Perhaps the government is making a statement. It somehow adds to the paradox of learning control to protest control. A question once so hotly debated here. A poet once said of the quartier, Arrière dedans la mer, I laugh in tears. Poets and artists would debate with professors at the Sorbonne by day and drink with thieves in the brothels of Saint-Jean-Marcel by night, she said, looking past me at the flow of tourists among the youthful chaos of students and clochards, students and tramps. Somehow I think Cartier is now becoming the fashion here over Camus. After the riots, the university was decentralized to the suburbs. You can tell the old hothouse atmosphere of the quartiers to being cool, she said with a sigh over the rim of her coffee cup. I'll bet the cops in Berkeley are glad there are no cobblestones on Telegraph, I replied with a grin. Wind lifted some strands of Delilah's long silky hair. Somehow I couldn't help but detect a faint whiff of tear gas as I looked into her dark eyes. So, did you live in the quartier when you were here last? I asked. Page 222. Actually, I stayed with mon mère, as well as for a spell with a comte and comtesse. They had an apartment just off La Vie des Champs-Élysées near l'Arc de Triomphe. I had to stroll through the Louvre on my way home, she replied with a sly look and a faint yawn. Not exactly thieves in the brothels by night, I said, stretching my legs until our knees touched. No, but the little hôtel we checked into, she offered with a nod toward the neighborhood, is rumored to have been one back in the day. By the look of it, I'd say it still has the same bathroom, I retorted, letting my hand stroke her thigh. Reaching over, she took a drag off my cigarette. Exhaling slowly for effect, she let the smoke waft over the table. I think we'd better take a walk before you start heating up, she said as I tried to catch the waiter. There is something a few blocks from here that I want to show you. Most tourists and even some of my friends here are oblivious to it, even though it's possible to feel a center of gravity there for all of modern Paris. The waiter brought our check as we got to our feet. Dell paid with a nod. Gardez la monnaie, she offered as we headed out to Le Boulevard Saint-Germain, then south on Rue Marguerite. My great-grandfather worked for Vauquier, first director of historical research in Paris. Then my father was a student of La Grande Fleury, another renowned historian said to be on intimate terms with the invisible, she said, giving me a keen sideways glance. So, you see, study of Paris history is in my blood. Perhaps their greatest discovery is La Reine de Lutèce, the 2,000-year-old site of the Roman arena. Lutèce or Laetitia is the early name for Paris, when it was still a Villon de la Parisae. Parisae, a Celtic tribe that first settled here. Then, when the Romans came in 54 BC, they gave it the name Lucti or Lutetia, a place of mud, marshes, and swamps. I'm guessing they didn't come as tourists, the Romans. No, but it's important to understand one thing about Paris and Parisians. Through all the centuries of invasion, conquest, and settlement, from Celts, Romans, Franks, and later Burgundians, Bretons, Auvergnats, Normans, Picards, Belgians, Jews, Alemanni, Greeks, and even English, there has never been any such thing as a typical Parisian identity. That identity is, was, and always has been a matter of style and behavior over territory or ethnicity. After walking a half dozen blocks, we came upon a grassy park surrounded by trees, embedded in the center with a clearly delineated historic ancient stone foundation. The feeling of traversing centuries sent a shiver up my spine. Here was the Roman arena, where nearly 2,000 years ago, some 16,000 watched early Christians killed for sheer amusement, Dell offered. With these words, I felt a whirlwind of memory layers spinning imaginings right before my eye, with a feeling as though free-falling through manifold superficial layers of memory. Death lingers here, now still with Paris life moving all around. Death of Christians. Death of a white Christ torn to pieces as if a seed pod ripped open, scattering across the path its seeds disseminated out in a 10,000 destinies. I, me, her, here while at the same time, not me, him there, in, out of it, in, out of it, back full of it, have lack of it all the while, staying again full of it, in a move meant to be coming or going of it again, a wave turning circumstantially, superficially a circumstance, circumscription scripting apart, playing all around that still eye, open or closed, naked or clothed, a person pervasive, premier, predominant now, wishing to live with intention of a pretension, pretending a while, of Willy, for the sake of forsaking a preferred identity to that of the pleasurable as axial, out in the proverbial blink of an eye now, running off at the open, strafed by Machina, gunning down in her eye, Ma's child's turning, yearning, burning to codgers and crones, dust to dust, devoured in time of our own Kali Ma, shrieking, shrinking, shriveling out in a her eye, our eye now, just us in time. Time's good or bad as any passing wave, our eye any now, why, or everybody only wishing to live a while with full intent as experiencing death after a while. Death in the morning or even in gaining only to lose without realizing why, who. Ever we all a wheel of fortune or misfortune of intent now, to find it not of ourselves, free this time, free of it for all time now, yet only who knows? Who sees to seize the day, to why or you or I forever appearing, staring it out of itself, seized in seeds of a white Christ, disseminating destinations of a destiny to fall, to sprout, to rise, to root in love, out in as swords cutting both ways, in love or hate. A person now a wit, with it as a keen perception and a pause, able desire, inciting intent, apt to find itself. Eve now, why, as expression of amusement to awaken free, free of it to beg in with death, meaning to have in mind yourself as born for it, born for death. It hit me then now with the full weight of a delivery truck, weighed down with the tonnage of death. A delivery truck delivering the weight of a life layered with memory building up, awaiting on death. Death, the only real end game, with that birth in mind, or why memory in the first place of any life lived only with that intent of being born for it, inexorably moving toward it, the quick of it moving so quickly in youth, then more slowly, typically slowing to a crawl in old age. Only the good die young, the rest of us crawling to the grave with all the indignities of aging. Perhaps I would have been better off, crushed then now by the weight of that truck, running, gunning over me without any word memory why, as existing to beg in the first or last place. There then now here, looking back, beneath that truck carriage, in the suspense of its suspension, leaf springs, coiled springs, hydraulic shock absorbers, me then a memory weightless, more unseen, at 2 years young, never weighed down by waiting on death, finding it weightless, more present. Now then, without that intent, pressing down at tension of pretension, only pretending to be me, Willie boy, a bye-bye intent, baby, of being a sky now knowing out of it why, born lying in wait, waiting with the weight of that intention of dying, or living weightless, more unseen, whoever sees without appearing to appear, whoever only to disappear whenever death comes or goes. Death now life lived merely with intention to find it so present without Jesus, weighed down by the gravity weight of waiting on it. Death, that is. That I am a memory-free awareness now, not as sword slicing, dicing, defining, defiling, tearing, shredding apart, playing a part of that indivisible individual only a while. Now, a keen, cunning, devious deceit of our own undoing done out in the time of our lives. Our time waiting on it, serving it, with our meager, measly, chintzy, thin king of it. Why, beyond the obvious, intending for it to be so. Myself to be melted away instantaneously into a singular stare, eyewitness now, to be a wit, witnessing a torrid, whirling whirl, mirage of creatures, reptilian to mammalian, beasts or boys, stalking, lurching, lashing, flying out only to be crushed in massive tusked jaws, turning, churning, grinding up now down a human being as children, quickly passing into codgers and crones to bones ground to dust, swirling, all borne out, torn away by the sheer velocity, of ill decide. Did yo, city of gods, Paris, she, by itself herself, to be quick then now, quickly the dead. A sulphurous odor assailed my nostrils, a vaporous melange of rotting decay matter swamped in choleric waters, floating with corpses, bloating, excreting blood, running, pouring out over rutted, dusty trails, antiquity of iniquity of big ones, devouring little ones, all being chaos without the slightest effect on in the centrality. Central it, why it's still motionless, more I, pivotal witness now a wit, first, a person to be of keen perception, perceived laughing, awakened at amusement and pleasure, free of attraction and repulsion, then now, ever clarity, a clear it why, completely clear of any information whatsoever, a wide opening eye, closing in on, looking like awareness of itself existing, seer, unseen insight, seeing, spreading out of itself a while, a keen, cunning, deceitful, dopey dupe duplicity out in words, still, indivisible from itself, pervasive, open or closed, naked or clothed, pervaded peripheral perimeters, of being first, foremost, and least of all, still, motionless, more, memory, a person pure and simple, free of it, a singularity, as free of it, why, who, ever it, a singular it, why, who sees, unseen. Hey, Willie! Then a voice drawing out words and forming a memory of me or you heard in a earth, ancient even of yore. Hey, Willie, you ready to rumble? Dell's eyes shone with amusement as she probed mine. Sometimes this ancient earth seems like all of it a sea, wet or dry, flowing with an atmosphere. Atma, endless then yesterday, or more beginning now today like a dream. Only awake, we think of feeling, being able to reach out and actually touch it. So touching, touch, to touch, or be touched by it. Page 224. A touch that seems to lead to a call for alcohol, I replied, stunned by the sound of my own voice. It seemed to remind me of needing a drink. Then, now, a thought. Out of it, in the blink of eye that spread it by itself, projection, ascendings ahead, behind, above, below, to the right, now, then left, to its own devices. Devising a planeting, heareth, duplicating sound, vigorous waves, our eye body as being any or everybody to intend, to perceive, to think of itself for themselves as thought, felt, feeling for Ma's possibilities, potent, impotent, portent, important, to beg in, begging to intend, to beg in, to differ, to differentiate, to have, and to hold it still a whole, wholly eye, merely appearing, staring itself, appearing, disappearing by that simple singular twist, twisting in two of two of who, ever indivisible individual, invisible it, why of itself as exiting, mirrored in word, going, or coming, denying, projecting, leaving right now, left out of it and about, of itself yet still, a motionless, more a singular it, why for whatever, who, ever you or I now knowing out of it a potent, portent, potential by for the furthest stretch of the imagination. As zany imagined movement, forsaking of a memory, forgetting, caught up in Are I remembering that I of I that am all that is, was, and who ever will intend to be me or you or I, etc., etc. Now, knowing ahead with arms and legs to walk and talk that wave our body, forgetting it on and on and on. The quartier now really seemed an ancient village within a modern city. Then we reached Ordre du Luxembourg, in that style Francaise of shady tree-lined avenues, bordering broad grassy esplanades. We found ourselves amongst natives taking leisure breaks as traffic continued to jam, bustling, streaming, honking along on Boulevard Saint Michel. A perspective of trees rode alongside the boulevard like sentinels led to a Renaissance-style palace several blocks distant. That's the palace Marie de Medici ordered built while she served as regent after her husband, King Henri IV, died. She hated the Louvre, which at that time was the palace of the king. Being right there on the Seine, well, it stank with that infamous Paris stench of shit, death, and the general lack of sewage drainage from a medieval city built on marshy swampland, Dell offered, pointing with a shrug. Medici sounds Italian. Remember what I told you about Parisian identity. But first, let me tell you some about Henri IV, the king she married. Are a Huguenot, a Protestant reformer, came to claim power after Henri III was assassinated in the midst of a 30-year civil war between Catholics and Protestants. Henri IV came from outside Paris, a Paris still under control of the Catholic League. He had to lay siege to it for over a year. As a result, over 100,000 Parisians died from war, starvation, and disease. People were reduced to eating dead dog entrails, rats, and even in some cases each other. Then the Spanish Catholics got involved, sending an army. Eventually, the powers that be worked out a compromise where Henri IV was allowed his triumphant entry into Paris as long as he converted to Catholicism. As you can imagine, after 3 decades, 30 years of civil war, Paris lay in ruins, churches and buildings destroyed, even the most prosperous streets now no more than muddy tracks covered in muck and excrement, air foul with death, flavored and stagnant flooded sewage. Variant diront, accra de Paris naissant, va ami avec la paix. The black shit of Paris sticks to you forever, be a loose translation. Houses and streets running wild with rats as many people died from plague and cholera as from the violence of civil war, Dell added, scrunching her nose. Sounds like they should have killed more Christians when that arena was going, I replied with a grimace, saying that reminded me again as a recovering Christian why so many modern-day sanitized, respectable Christians seem blissfully oblivious to the bloody, torturous treachery of torn, broken bodies enslaved, littering the path of this sadomasochistic white Christ hoodoo religion. But don't get me started. For me, being fully aware of all that gory past history makes any idea of entering the church to take of the flesh and blood, transubstantiated or not, positively revolting. Seems to me if all these wide-eyed folks today really knew of the past history of that sadomasochistic genocide and enslavement of people's minds behind that symbol of torture that the crucifix actually represents, they wouldn't be able to eat or sleep, let alone so blindly sashay into another church, only to pay praying for the seat by leaving any rational thinking mind checked at the door. Page 226. Leave your mind or your memory at the door. As a disciple of a religion purporting to follow a white Christ, only imagine and fantasize as Christian when Jesus, in fact, a Jew after all to feel self-righteous, but then don't get me started. Dell paused with a look of curious wonder before continuing. Just trying to give you a taste of some of the raw carnage behind the 2000 years settlement of this city of light. But in 1600, Henri IV turned out to be, after all the pox and starvation he brought, a rather fun-loving guy. Fortunately, his love of sex, music, and wine went along with the total disregard for that smug, self-righteous moralizing of religion, as well as all that mean-spirited political maneuvering. In that bacchanalian spirit, he divorced his staid queen for a luscious, well-known beauty, Gabriella, who was then poisoned by a jealous crony of his. That's when he married Marie de Medici, said to be rather fat and homely, but rich. That brings us here to this Luxembourg palace, as Henri IV was assassinated by a would-be Catholic monk incensed with the king's pleasure-seeking ways. That left Marie in power as regent until Henri's successor reached the appropriate age. She, now in the position to move out of the stinking Louvre, ordered up a new palace further away from that fetid, polluted river, though it would not be completed in her lifetime. To finish the story of Henri and Marie, let me add that though he brought a period of peace and prosperity, helping rebuild Paris, the City of Light was far from any sort of paradise, especially for the old, the poor, or the sick. Let me add that our Eurocentric world never been close to being all that wonderful for them that ain't God, I added with a frown. Even in the best of times and places, for truly I thought, it seems we favor thinking of ourselves, born here only to suffer, from that fateful, inciting intention to be a lack of it, for lack of a better world, suffering, it seems should suffice to make anyone wonder of it. Why all the suffering, only to die? Unfortunately, that survival instinct, wishing to live, even just a while, only to die, overrides any real or possible intention to inquire into why. Why, then, is all as we perfectly intend for it ourselves to be born, for better or worse, if only a while now, only to die. With that in mind, we simply make the best of it, completely accepting that inevitability of suffering death, so gladly relinquishing any attempt at self-inquiry as being complete waste of time. Any thinking of it, even completely inane, boring, silly, stupid thoughts, preferred to giving ourselves a chance to find freedom. Freedom. That is sad, but so typical that I might myself no longer wish to live, intending to wonder why, except for the fact that I am apparently pre-selected by the good God or not so good God fortune to have been metaphorically killed to begin my life, killed from any chance of living simply as though, as thought felt in words of it, born only to be bored out of it, to lose in touch, again as much in word as anything, any thinking of it as thoughts of me or you, as me or you, a mem or y, in, out, in, the or y, as mere theory now, knowing, denying itself as thought felt theoretically beside that point of you or I, yet merely appearing, staring itself, existing only forgetting it on and on or off. Henri's Paris could be monumental, even sometimes magnificent, but at the same time infested with murderous criminals nicknamed coupe bourges or tireurs de lame, who in broad daylight slashed purses open or pulled furry cloaks right off shoulders of terrified citizens. It didn't help that these gangsters were rumored to be linked to the very guards set up by the king to protect the citizens. But worst of all were the barbers, knife-wielding youths who would march straight away into the homes of the rich and demand money with their knives to the throat, Dell said, drawing her hand across hers. So you see, no matter what, how comparatively tame Paris is now today. Well, maybe we will be able to take a bit of a walk on that wild side of her, I gave with a sly grin. With that, we walked on towards making our way back around to our little bordello in the village. But first, along the way, we headed to that proverbial 19th century icon of Iron Age irony that was, at the time of its construction, the tallest man-made structure in the world. Its original design consisted of 4 vertical columns capped by a pyramidal shape reminiscent of an obelisk. Then the designer, reminded of his own first name starting with A, found his hand drawing on gracefully curving that verticality till all 4 columns merged into a singular column. Thus, Alexander Gustav Eiffel turned his tower into one of the world's most renowned symbols that now loomed just ahead, just beyond Napoleon Bonaparte's tomb. We sauntered beneath the iron framework, only pausing a moment to crane our necks to gaze up at the 1,600 plus stairs leading 1,000 feet to the top. Perhaps later we would climb up to it, but for now we were full, as if having just had a 7-course meal. Page 228. Our time together somehow seemed nearing an end, as if hearing it approach, shaking passing trees and the earth on which we walked. Turning now to walk the Quai d'Orsay. 3 one-way lanes of traffic assailed our ears. It jammed with urban frenzy only to be abruptly halted at the next red light. Meanwhile, the river flowed alongside, just as it had when Julius Caesar first set foot on her banks 2,000 years ago. Paris, we strolled along in the heart of her, yet feeling the weight of our own hearts, heavy with the approach of such sweet and sour parting. Still, Paris, Paris, she beat vibrantly, with the multitude sound of footfalls and engines combusting, the river ribboning through, an eternal life force, changeless and ever-changing human wave, ocean crashing against city. Holding hands as we strolled along, I swept her into an embrace, our lips meeting like hot magnets. Now, which way to our bordello? I whispered in her ear, nuzzling her silky hair. I detected a faint smell of Paris, somewhere between lilacs and death. Easy, cowboy. There are still so many things I want to show you, she said, looking off. Over there, L'École Beaux-Arts, she replied with a slight catch in her throat. Mecca was all I could think to say. Beaux-Arts conjured the genius of Ang, Sergeant David, a procession of some of the most outstanding saints and sinners to take up crayon and brush. Page 228. As a prodigy, painting preoccupied me for several years before learning to read. In a way, learning letters as words, as swords slicing and dicing along with grammar, infected me with a parasite that put my intuitive mind under the spell of the intellectual thinking, stinking, sinking, sorrowful mind, as thought of it out as though beside that point of view, beside the point of view, or our I now, knowing, projecting out of it, memory, me or you, yet merely appearing it. Why me inward, mirrored in memory now, captured, imprisoned in thoughts, knowing out of it, in a word, prison. Prison built with letteral bricks of concept, a tower of Babel, now speaking frivolously, knowing out of it a memory of myself. I built in words a prison of it. Why, as only in a name, an arbitrary given name, for myself, bound to be struck by that lightning synapse between a person still motionless more now, knowing out of it a move, meant to be then emotion, of I motion, a lifetime of it now then, a while, coming or going, under the weight of waiting to die, appearing or disappearing, weightless more simply as thought felt heavy, having appearing, still disappearing periodically as leap back to a black now, out on or off, now a ledge, now ledge, then on a gain of knowing out of it, awakening as to, twisting that black around as a gain of it, still a singular it. Why? You're asking of it. Why then a tawdry, teary, thin king of it? Why? As X, y'all. Why, beyond the obvious, as sex? Not to mention drugs, rock and roll, and all that jazz. Oh, y'all that jazz. Jah as I, first person of I, that am that seer of that one who sees, as leap into a singular consciousness. Jah as leap, asleep desire a blackness now to be nothing but you or I, only a gain to awaken, attend, a binary duplication of any situation, yet freestanding I of I first, a person who is unseen, Jah as that I am that eye, staring of a blackness now, nothing but you or I. Why? What about it? For it is just us over a third of our lifetime. Years, years of our lifetime, years of any or everybody's lifetime. Does it count for anything beyond nothing but you or I that is beyond the obvious to rest our eyes on that I am now asleep as nothing but a lack of you or I, of a third of our lifetime as a third eye, indivisible, invisibility, invisible it, why now, only to awaken notin, a binary of it, a by now, our eye, merely appearing, staring it into twisting that lack a gain, appearing in two eyes, appearing in visibility, only mirrored in words, as if an object yet still the subject of that which we are talking now, as no and then. People will talk about it. Why, as someone asked me once about opening the third eye, as that question ran through the psychic transducer in my mind or memory lab, I find myself that am at last first a person that I am, all that I, a seer of one singular who sees directly covered, clothed, unseen, indivisible, invisibility, why, as X per I in seeing itself, periodically over a third of our lifetime, as a third eye, never, ever closed, only covered or clothed in a word now, a sense as not it, of at lackness in sight, somehow as lacking it, ironically completely inciting intent to be a gain of it, a person all eye, there, or open, always open, only to be clothed, supersonically, supernaturally, superimposed in a word cover as if it were blacked out in sight of alackness, instilling intent to be a gain of it by looking out of it, now not, only as itself, thus that paradox, a singular eye of that I am first of all, forever who, forever a person indivisible, individual now only knowing out of itself, paradoxically, for a while, deny, DNA as thought to be duped, conned out in a consciousness duplicating as a duplicity, now then, only to fall back as sleep into a consciousness, periodically over a third of our lifetime, finding just us indivisible, invisible it, why, a trinity. A first person that I am a seer, one single who sees unseen a third of our lifetime as a third eye, supple eye, indivisible from itself, invisibility, itself, ourselves, any or everybody, going asleep, coming back to a lack again of a consciousness, indivisible now, not to be observing, waiting on it out in objectivity. Now, for a third eye time of our lives, that I am everybody who, finding it out for themselves, sees in a third eye indivisible invisibility, Eve now as thought to be out in visibility. Find out for yourself that insight that I am alone ever, forever, yet that one who sees, that single one who sees. Why, as X per eye in seeing, experiencing only you or I completely covered or clothed by now, knowing. No winging, ignoring, projecting, objecting, a singular it, why inciting, instilling intent of a perceived, intentional, ablackness desire, now to be not, as a gain, a duplicity, or double-dealing deceitfulness of it, a gain, awaken Aten, a binary by now our eye, awaken Aten as king of it, why at Aten Chian, Aten binary, by now our eye, bipolarity, a by baby, as Ka nowing, projecting a wishing wheel as we all a wheel, karmic, comic, cosmic, memory, intelligence, conning consciousness, turning, yearning, burning, so, positive, negative, only intending, pretending, a while, awake, Akhenaten, as king of it, why, attention, paid off out of it a while, double dealing still, motionless, more that I am, why, SX, experiencing out in a third eye, a mono eye, a third of our lifetime, without any money to spend as that miserly, miserable, chintzy, wanton, needy, greedy, thin king of it, why, now, a while, awaken, awaken binary, etc., etc. A with Akhenaten, that I am as king of it, why? As that is our intention to perceive it for ourselves as that, why, as poor excuse, an emaciated, stark, starved, thin king of itself. Why? Why, so we'll turn to need money as a mono eye covered now by a black eye of everybody only intending to be not. Only a gain as thought felt born, waiting under Jesus, gravity weight of emotion, all still, eye of eye, first a person, first, still motionless, more weightless, more yet, a person unborn, unseen, untouched, as experienced directly, periodically, over a third of our lifetime, out in a third eye, supple eye, supplying a blissful consciousness awareness, a where being con, twisted in two eyes, right now left crossing over, from free seer, simply the one who sees across to a being captive out in the complexity of whoever thinks to look out at themselves mirrored in words, so many words, as if eyes, nose, lips, tongue to speak, ears to hear, only words, as swords to cut out of it a captivity of it. Why a wily while now, in sound vigorous waves, our eye body, everybody being to wish to live, with full intention for it to be so. So, positive, negative, knowing now, a while, only to die trying. Bipolarity, a double-dealing duplicity. When you or I bring that third eye, supple eye, into play while awake now, then you or I become a trinity. A trinity. A trinity, not only a binary. A trinity. That third eye, supple eye, supplies awareness of a singularity to offset the duplicity, the double dealing, as being thought felt born out of it, appearing only disappearing while disappearing in death, a duplicity born to death, in realizing that third eye, supple eye, seer, that one singular who forever sees, then now first and foremost a person unseen, untouched, find immortality for yourself now in your lifetime. Just us now, not only a third of our lifetime, but completely in play as who sees all the time, all the lifetime, who only appearing right now, left crossing over, across from seer insight seen, covered over in word thoughts of a thinker, thinking, fabricating a fabric of space-time to clothe itself supernaturally, superimposed, covering over itself in word thoughts of a thinker thinking. Why to look out for itself, ourselves in a lifetime as y'all? Sexuality, self-conscious of our nakedness now, clothed in order to perpetuate the race, racing, chasing its own tail as though born to death. In other words, after falling under that spell, understanding the inward spelling out of it in order to think of ourselves clothed to play a part, as a part separate. Why? To incite desire as y'all, as sexual, forgetting who. Forever why, for whatever reason, forgetting it on. In, out, in, out, in, out. As you see here, as naked, there is less attention paid looking to find out what whoever looks like underneath that clothing. Thus, free of that titillation of suggestion as being clothed, covered by it, why as excitement for desire, forgetting who alone sees, as now whoever inciting intent, forgetting of on, and on, in, out, in, out, in, out, as beyond the obvious reason for getting it. Why, forgetting it on, out in, out in, out in there is here now naked freedom, realizing who is free of it, unclothed, uncovered, naked all along. A freedom realized now, not forgetting that third eye of it. Why? Indivisible, individual, invisibility, just us, as experienced directly over a third of our lifetime. A third eye time covered as sleep into ignorance of it now, only knowing, no winging out of it right now, left awakening, thinking of it, why, as otherwise, as sex, as existential, A third eye, supple eyes supplying blissful consciousness. Now, not bipolarity, only positively negating knowing it as sorrow. Sorrow, rather, now realized as a trinity. A trinity finding itself still motionless, more between any movement right now left crossing over, across that synapse sparking the arc of the covenant, that ancient agreement with a God essay to be as thoughts, thinking to cover up its nakedness, to conceal our true identity, forgetting it on now for a long while, a wily while, a duplicity of two eyes, right now left out of it in memory, emoting emotion of the weight, of waiting still, motionless, more weightless, more a singular person who sees only itself, a third of our lifetime, as a third eye, a lifetime now, a third eye, supple eye, at first that I am a person who sees, unseen, untouched, unborn, thus now not waiting, under the Jesus gravity weight of waiting on death, as being that psi-hole transducer, our eye transmitting pulls now no punches, pulling out all the stops, stopping that third eye from bursting the seams of that space-time fabric, as being cloth clothing that singularity, a singular it, why now, revealed, a cool, warm, blue-grayish light field, unfelt, untouched by the touching weight of waiting any longer or shorter for it. Why? Full of itself, fully intending to find itself free now, freed forever. Freedom, great God Almighty, as any thoughts of it for or against staying out of sight, merely looking for it. Why? Supernatural, superimposed superficially in words, as if eyes, nose, lips, etc., etc. A third eye, supple eye, supplying insight between, right now left, only looking out for its still motionless, more unseen, unrealized, till now. Breaking through, a voice of that destroyer, destroying ignorance of it. Only no winging projecting out of it. Why? For whatever reason, that status quid pro quo of substituting whoever for who, forever who right now, left out of it in the dark, the D-arc of that covenant, that ancient agreement for now of not realizing why, or you or I of it. Why as X, as experienced directly, periodically, over a third of our lifetime, as a third eye, supple eye of a seer, that singular one who sees, unseen, unrealized till now, not clothed, not covered, not closed, but openly naked for all to see. Ah, that such as that I am that I, staring of a blackness now, nothing but your eye. As it is but for now, we're together in Paris, even if only a day and a night. She, here, her, she makes it all seem worthwhile.